Today we have two skills that we are going to go over. But before we get into our skills this week, we're going to do a brief mindfulness exercise that has to do in relation to our values. So I am using one of my wellness deck cards today to have you reflect on your values. So you have options. You can simply close your eyes and reflect on your values that are important to you as I guide us through. Or if you want to write them down. So if you want to grab a piece of paper, a journal, a post-it note, something to jot some of your ideas down, you're welcome to do so at this point. So this is called just a values reflection. Values are personal beliefs that guide daily life decisions. They act as a filter, helping you stay true and connected to yourself. Reflect on what matters most to you and identify 6 to 8 core values. They may be values that were passed down to you, values you have admired others, or values you established along the way. If you find yourself getting stuck, think about the high and low moments in your life for insight into what you value. So go ahead and take a few moments to jot those down or to silently reflect on what matters most to you. If you need more time, just go ahead and pause this video. But if not, think about posting your values where you can see them daily. From time to time, reflect on how you've been spending your time and ask yourself if it's in line with your values. Continue to update your values as you grow and evolve. Because remember, values don't always stay the same. They can develop, change, and grow as we are also growing. So I invite you to just take a moment to reflect on what it was like to think about what's most important to you. What are your values, your priorities? Think about if there's anything you would like to change. Even think about how your values may be different, similar to the people in your life. And thank you for taking some time to reflect on these things. So today, like I said, we are going to cover two different skills. The first we're going to talk about is the biosocial theory. And then we are also going to talk about the 3 states of mind and cover wise mind. So I'm going to share my screen for us to follow along in our workbook. Okay. So the biosocial theory, this theory really helps us explain and understand why it may be really difficult for us to manage our emotions. And there's 2 really big components here. So we may wonder, like, why is it really difficult for us to regulate? Why does it feel like things are out of control? And this theory really helps us understand the why behind it. There are 2 parts to this, like I was saying, the biology piece, right? That's where we get the bio, and then the social piece, which is our environment. The biology part, where this is sometimes where folks are just more biologically sensitive, right? We might be more prone to reacting really quickly to situations where we might go 0 to 100 really quick. We might feel like we're really easily activated or easily triggered. And then it could also mean that we might take a really long time or a while to calm down or return to our baseline. And all these things are okay. I think sometimes it's just better understanding ourselves. The biology part here, like some people are more emotionally sensitive and vulnerable than others. It is simply a biological component, meaning that this is how some people are born. And so it's okay, right? We might even know people in our life or in our families that are more sensitive, right? Maybe we have a parent or caregiver that is more sensitive. This means that sometimes people can be more easily triggered, like I mentioned earlier. Some people may experience more intense emotions at a higher frequency, and they may last longer. This can often feel like riding an emotional roller coaster. I often say this I give this example to help better understand. It's just as simply as like how other people have sensitivities to maybe like gluten or dairy, right? And that doesn't make their sensitivities bad or wrong. And it's the same thing with emotions. We may have things that are more sensitive when it comes to our emotions, things that maybe really bother us deeply that maybe don't bother other people. And that's okay. The other part of this is our environment, right? And that we may have an environment that might not match our needs. And an invalidating environment can be painful for those that are more emotionally vulnerable. Folks may receive messages from others that they are wrong, bad, or different for feeling things more intensely. And when I say our environment, I think about everyone that you interact with. So this can be your immediate family, extended family, friends, peers, classmates, teachers, coaches, your bus driver, your neighbors, really anyone that you're having social interactions with. And some examples like this, maybe that you are maybe like too dramatic or it's not that big of a deal. You'll maybe hear some of these invalidating things. And a lot of times it's because our environment, we're not like blaming them, but they might not really understand that that doesn't really land well with us. We may get the message that our emotions like are wrong or bad. You shouldn't feel that way. Or our environment may even provide us like simple solutions to what feel like really big problems. So maybe you've heard before from a coach just saying, oh, just shake it off or go for a walk and you'll feel better, when it might not just be like that simple for us to get support or to regulate. Sometimes we may feel like our environment only sees or hears us when our emotions are really big. And so, therefore, they might be missing some of the smaller moments when we're feeling just like a little bit sad or a little bit anxious. And so, sometimes that can also be invalidating in our environment. So, then the third part of this, so like the big two main pieces are the biology and the invalidating environment. What happens is when these things intersect, right? There's a transaction involved between ourselves and our environment, right? And this theory emphasizes that this is a transaction, right? So we might be feeling something really deeply, and then our environment may be invalidating. And that is the root of what might make us feel really dysregulated or have a really difficult time managing our emotions. This also says when folks who are more vulnerable to their emotions interact with an invalidating environment over and over again, this leads to further emotion dysregulation. Creating new and more meaningful transactions can help establish healthier relationships and further help us teens regulate emotions. Okay. So, how can we practice this? How can we better understand this concept? Right. So, one thing I think would be helpful is better understanding our emotional sensitivities, right? So, maybe we make a list of things that set off big emotions. What are the things that are really triggering for us? What are the things that are really difficult for us? Bring awareness to our emotional vulnerabilities, right? So, what are the things that, like, if maybe you're more vulnerable if you don't get a really good night's sleep, right? And so, being aware of that can be really helpful because there are things we can do to help promote better sleep. But sometimes just being aware that, hey, this happened and I'm might be a little bit more emotional today. uh, Practice mindfulness around this by taking a non judgmental approach, noticing times when you are more vulnerable and creating a cope ahead plan for these situations. If you are up really late studying for a test, maybe we have a cope ahead plan of how can I manage this situation when it happens, right? What are some skills I can do to help cope ahead for when I do have a really big test and I might not get a full night's sleep? The next point is notice ways you would like to be validated during these times of stress. And then it's important to communicate these examples to family and friends and the people that you're interacting with, right? And so if you have a parent or caregiver that often will dismiss your stress or concerns, letting them know, hey, can we try saying this instead? This might make me feel a little bit better when you say it like this. Sometimes we're not blaming our parents or caregivers or anything like that. We are just simply trying to help support the transaction and help improve it. And then practice with a caregiver on ways to respond to one another that feels supportive to both ends. And so there might be times too when we're invalidating other people in our life. And so having that open communication of how can we both do things a little bit differently that feel really supportive for both of us. And how can we ultimately improve the transaction? Okay. So, just to give some more examples of what this means to be more highly sensitive, right? Things may bother you more intensely than others. I often say to folks, I am somebody that is more highly sensitive. My brother, on the other hand, not so much, right? So, something that bothers me, like I might be thinking about it more or ruminating on it versus, oh, he just brushes it off. And we're not saying one is bad or good or the other, it just is what it is. Um, the second example, you may be more sensitive to information and have stronger reactions to things, right? So you might have like bigger emotional responses, behaviors, reactions. Examples of invalidation. When someone tells you you're just being dramatic, right? Hearing someone in your life say it's not that big of a deal. I don't know why you're so upset. That's invalidating. Or people just saying, just shake it off, take a breath, right? Oversimplifying things can also feel really unhelpful and ultimately make us feel like unheard or not seen. This is an example of what a transaction could look like. So maybe our caregiver says, why are you feeling sad? And the teenager says, John just broke up with me. The caregiver says, good riddance. We didn't like him anyways. He isn't worth being sad over. The teen said, I am sad because I really cared about him and now I feel really lonely. Caregiver might respond by saying, he isn't worth your tears. You will get over him soon. And the teen might feel shame or for feeling lonely and sad. They might shut down and isolate because they don't feel seen or heard. Caregiver feels confused and angry that teen is missing dinner and isolating in their room. So that's an example of a transaction of invalidation, right? The caregiver not truly understanding like how upset their teen might be, and by really dismissing the teenage relationship, and then a teen feeling really shut down. Okay. Patterns like the one listed above can play out over and over again and create patterns of invalidation, miscommunication, and ineffective communication. So here are some examples of validation. That must be so hard. I am sorry you're feeling sad. Would you like to talk about it? I can see you're really struggling. This looks like it's really hard for you. Can I help in any way? Okay. Here is just a story time that we'll go through together and give you a moment to reflect and think on it. So, Carrie uses she, her pronouns, is naturally a more sensitive person. It often takes her a long time for her to return to her baseline after experiencing intense emotions. Her family is aware she often needs space to decompress in her room after an argument. Carrie starts to feel increasingly agitated and overwhelmed when her mom says she cannot go out with her friends and needs to attend her grandmother's birthday party that Carrie already committed to. Carrie and her mom, Lisa, begin to yell back and forth, and Carrie yells at her mom, you don't care if people exclude me because I can't go to this. Lisa yells back to Carrie that she is selfish for wanting to miss her grandmother's celebration. Carrie walks away to remove herself from the situation and slams her door shut. Lisa proceeds to open Carrie's bedroom door and inform Carrie of the reasons she needs to attend her grandmother's birthday dinner. Carrie becomes even angrier and throws a book across the room. Lisa then focuses on Carrie picking up the book off the floor and cleaning the mess she made. This interaction continues to escalate until Lisa decides to remove herself from the situation. This transaction between Carrie and Lisa is ineffective and further leads to emotion dysregulation on both ends. So now both Carrie and mom, Lisa, are both feeling really dysregulated. What could both Carrie and Lisa have done differently to have a more effective conversation that didn't lead to an emotional dysregulation or emotional outburst? So I'd like you to pause this video to write down a few things that you think that how this interaction could go differently. What could both mom and Carrie do differently that might have had a different end result? Okay. So, some ways you can practice this at home. So, you can practice this yourself by recognizing and labeling your own triggers, your own emotional vulnerabilities. Use mindfulness skills to identify and notice your emotional vulnerabilities here. You can do this with a peer or a friend. Connect with a friend and share your emotional vulnerabilities. Have a discussion of things that make you both feel more intense emotions. Listen to one another speak. You may deepen your connection. Can do this with a parent or a caregiver by discussing with your parent ways to strengthen your interactions. Share with your caregiver some known triggers and ways you are working on managing your emotions. Ask your parent to also share their experience so you can better understand one another. Okay. So, over this next week, I want you to think about and write some things down about how you've practiced this. How have you practiced the biosocial theory with either yourself, a peer, or a parent? Was it effective? What did you notice? What was different about using the biosocial theory this week? And then rating your emotions before and after. Okay. So we are now going to transition to wise mind. So this is our second skill that we're learning today. And really, when we think about wise mind and this new skill, we're going to be talking about the three states of mind and how to can work towards finding a more balanced mindset, which is our wise mind. So, wise mind is finding balance with acknowledging your thoughts and honoring your emotions. It is using mindfulness to achieve the middle path. Accessing your wise mind can help you make healthy and effective choices. So, essentially, when we think about we want to establish a state of mind where we can feel our emotions and acknowledge our thoughts. How can we bring and marinate both of them? Because both are really important. So, what we need to know here in DBT, there are three states of mind: reason mind, emotion mind, and wise mind. We're first going to talk about reason mind. Reason mind is when you are informed by facts of the situation. We like to think it's our cool, rational, and task oriented mind. Emotions and feelings are often not a factor when we're in reason mind. They're often on the back burner. Often we're not really acknowledging or feeling our emotions. We're going to get to an example in a few moments here. I don't want to jump ahead. Our emotion mind is when you respond with your emotions and your emotions are in control, right? Your emotions are running the show here. Your emotions take over your thinking, behaviors, and urges to act or say things. Logic and facts go out the window. We're not really even thinking about the facts of the situation. We're really fueled by our emotions here. Okay. And then, like I mentioned earlier, just to recap, wise mind is the center, right? It's taking both of the really important parts of both wise mind and reason mind here. It recognizes the facts of the situation while still feeling the emotions that you're experiencing. Wise mind is ultimately uncovering the inner wisdom within yourself and responding intentionally with recognizing your emotions and calculating the facts. And so our goal here is to work on trying to achieve wise mind. We're not always going to be in wise mind because we're human. And sometimes we are going to be in emotion mind. Sometimes we're going to be in reason mind. And I think sometimes just having that awareness is really helpful. Like, how can we work towards wise mind? How can we, when we're um, making decisions, how can we slow down? How can we work on trying to achieve a wise mind, more balanced state to make really effective decisions or to cope more effectively in a situation? Okay. All right. How to practice. And then we'll talk through some examples. We want to notice extremes in our thoughts or behaviors. For example, thinking everything is terrible or feeling very impulsive. So we just want to notice, and this is something that I want to encourage you to bring to your individual therapist here. Where are the extremes? Do we have extremes in our thoughts? Are we thinking really catastrophically, or are we thinking all or nothing thoughts? And then even thinking about our emotions, right? Are our emotions really extreme and then result in extreme behaviors, right? Are we being impulsive? Are we acting on our target behavior? Are we doing any sort of high risk behavior that might be really fueled by our emotions? So being able to notice and point these out can be really helpful in just bringing awareness to these patterns. Practice mindfulness by taking a deep breath, bringing your attention to the present moment, right? Sometimes if we're not being mindful and intentional, it's really hard for us to access our wise mind. Find balance by challenging extreme thoughts and choosing a more reasonable response. So, again, noticing those extreme thoughts, then how can we actually challenge them? What can we do a little bit differently so that we can work on tipping that iceberg and not going to extreme thoughts? Where can we find a little bit more balance and challenging them? The fourth point here is making a pros and cons list to help with making a more balanced decision using both emotions and facts. So, again, you can do this on your own, or you could also bring a pros and cons list into your next individual session that you can really go into depth with your therapist. All right, so let's talk about some examples. Some examples in Reason Mind might be creating and completing a to do list, following a recipe, completing a puzzle, solving a math equation, doing homework, driving and following directions, or taking a test. It's really task oriented, right? So this could just be, like I said, making a to do list, checking it off, all these examples here, like where we're really just like zoning in on what are the facts, gonna just complete these tasks. Oftentimes, there's not a lot of emotion tied to them. So even just think of some examples of when you might be in reason mind. I know for myself, like it is the creating that to-do list, or I'm in reason mind when I might be following a recipe. Another example, budgeting is another one too, where you might just be like following a spreadsheet here. Creating a study guide is another good example of being in reason mind. Okay, so then examples of emotion mind, falling in love, right? When we are experiencing those intense love feelings, which again feels probably really good. That's an example when we might be in emotion mind, and we that emotion might be even clouding judgment. Could be lashing out at our sibling, acting on a target behavior, or some sort of urge that we're having. Emotion mind could be saying something in the heat of the moment, right? Something impulsive, something that we might end up regretting down the line. Being an emotion mind might look like sending a rapid fire text to a friend and you're just spewing out thoughts. Could be throwing a book down on the ground, right? If we're throwing an object or trying to release our anger in that way. Then I want you to reflect on what are some examples when you are an emotion mind. So if you need to pause, go ahead and jot some examples of what it looks like for you to be in reason mind as well as emotion mind. And then wise mind. So some examples of wise mind could be deciding on a college. I feel like this is always a really great example because when you're thinking about choosing a college, and if maybe you're out of college and you're watching, this could even apply to choosing a career or a job, right? So if we are thinking about deciding on a college, we want to think about our emotions, right? Do we feel welcome? Do we feel accepted? Do we feel good when we're walking on campus? What is the feeling you get when you think about being at that college? Can you picture yourself there? Does it feel like an environment that you feel really comfortable, safe, and excited about? And then it's acknowledging the logic here, right? Does the college have your major that you want to study and pursue? What's the tuition look like? And what is financial aid like? Is it something that's feasible? What's the commute like? Was it close to home, what you want, or is it far away? Thinking about like all those kind of big decisions, it's really important to acknowledge both sides. And same with job, right? Is it a place where we can really see ourselves working at? Did we get a good impression and feeling when we were interviewing and talking with coworkers or our potential boss? And then the other side, too, reason, do the hours work for your needs? The salary, is it something that works with your life? And so being able to make any big decisions. Another example here is finding balance in a relationship, whether to stay in it or to leave it. Using pros and cons to help make decisions and using skills to resist acting on urges. So again, take a moment, maybe pause this video, Jot down some examples of what it looks like for when you are in wise mind. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move to our story time here. So, John, who uses he, him pronouns, feels really upset about a bad grade on a test. He noticed the urge to approach the teacher and blame her for the test grade. Instead, he used mindfulness to take a moment to notice his extreme thoughts and judgments. By doing this, he was able to notice his role and how he received that score. Instead of lashing out, he approached the teacher to have a discussion and asked for extra credit to help pull his grade up. He acknowledged his role in needing to take more time at night to study and take better notes during class. In this example, John effectively practices ways to access his wise mind by using mindfulness to have a more productive conversation with his teacher and acknowledge that he feels sad about his test grade, while also acknowledging and recognizing the facts of how he can prepare better next time. So, one example of how wise mind can look like in the classroom setting. Okay. So, here are some ways that we can practice the three states of mind and wise mind at home. For yourself, reflect on a recent situation where you notice extreme thoughts or behavior. Write down 3 small actions you can take to find balance and avoid going to extremes. You can do this with a peer or a friend by share with a friend one extreme thought or behavior you've noticed in yourself. Ask them if they've experienced something similar. Brainstorm together 3 strategies to find balance in challenging situations. Then you can do this with a caregiver or a parent by discussing with your parent a situation when you felt your thoughts or behaviors were extreme. Ask for their input on finding balance and share one action you plan to take to achieve it. Okay. And then, in addition to doing the biosocial theory, I also want to encourage you to practice wise mind and filling out these questions over the next week. Share how you have practiced wise mind with either yourself, a peer, or parent, and you can go ahead and journal and reflect on that there. And then reflect on, was it effective? What did you notice? What was different about practicing wise mind this week? And then lastly, how did you feel before and after practicing wise mind? So you're writing the emotion before and after and the intensity. All right. So that brings us to our conclusion for today's skills. If there's any questions or anything feels a little unclear, again, feel free to bring this into your individual sessions to get a little bit more feedback and support from your individual therapist. All right. Thank you.